And in the spirit of Olympics, it's time now for sports news. We're crossing live to Paris, where the Minister of Sports Development in Nigeria, John Enoh, is addressing the media. Let's listen.
In terms of what the ministry was supposed to do, either in terms of local camping, foreign camping, in terms of whatever, and I've taken a study and found out most of the things that are always a problem, Olympics after Olympics. And I think that what we tried to do was to make sure that we close all the gaps. If it's in terms of paying of athletes, they were paid in advance. Every leg of the provisions of the allowances supposed to be paid, they were paid in advance. If it was to motivate them, we tried to do so. I wasn't able to visit the camp in Germany. My permanent secretary visited that camp. But I read comments from athletes themselves and officials as to the quality of that camp. So everything that we should do, I believe that we did as a ministry. You couldn't find athletes complaining of unpaid whatever. I visited the games village and I had an interaction with the athletes. And I listened to their complaints. After that, we increased their training grants, foreign training grants, beyond what we had budgeted for. The local athletes, made a complaint that they are never paid those grants, that they also spend money, although they operate at home. We made sure for the first time there was some provision for them. So at every point we've had to, a few things came up, of course, for which we've had to also respond as a ministry. So if it's in terms of leadership, we've tried to do that. But I think that Olympics and the outcomes and all of that are always a function of too many variables. I'm talking about the training and the preparation, how much of it took place, the commitment of the athletes and their level of patriotism. And when I say what I want to say, I'm by no means, trying to drag any of our athletes, because as young men and women, I believe that they have done well for country. I remain proud of our athletes in spite of the outcome of the Olympics. It's not easy in a world of how many billion people. In those days, they used to say that, the fun is not in winning, it's in participating. If you compete, you're an athlete, and get to a point that you attend the Olympics, I think that there is no reason why a country shouldn't be proud. But I've also come face to face with a few situations, and I can mention this. I've watched games and seen Nigeria lose, certain times badly, and I've waited back to have a one-on-one with who competed. And I've had that one-on-one, and I've asked the question, how do you feel? And I've received a response that I'm very satisfied, and I've immediately said, don't let Nigerians hear you say you're satisfied. That's from the level of the athlete. You lose a game that the entire country is watching, and I'm minister and I'm asking you, how do you feel? You say you're satisfied. So we're talking about the level of commitment and patriotism. I've also gone through a situation in which you find somebody who is at the leadership of a particular federation, not in Nigeria, at the international level. And the person's sport is part of the sport that has competed in those Olympics. And of course, that sport did so badly. And the person is in touch with me, and we chat once in a while. And there is no chat that betrays that. The only chat that I get is a picture of the person and a colleague at the international level, a selfie. And I know the comments that person makes in platforms on other matters very strongly. So our problems are plenty. And there's plenty as that. So for me, like I said, I started by saying that my takeaway from this is, what do we learn from what has happened? How much does that fire us in terms of what to expect in the next 4 years? As we get back home, how does this inform our level of organization? The Ministry of Sports has a yearly program, we call it National Youth Games. How much of what has happened now should get us to think about what to do to get those games to work more than they are working? The National Sports Festival comes up in January in Ogun State. How much of that are we going to consider helpful? And all of that. What about the matters of infrastructure? What about the matters of funding for sports? How much of this challenges us? So for me, I wish that I was speaking to you with records outcomes that were better and positive. But let's turn what has happened to a huge positive for Nigerian sports. Let's hope that what has happened now turns attention to what this sector requires. If you look at the overall medals table, there's no difference between the countries that lead the world. Is it US? Is it China? They are the people that are still topping the table. That means that sports has become something else. It has become soft power. Countries decide to fight or to play, both of them, in order to do or to maintain what status that they want to have. So a lot of things, and I think that you know better, but there are quite a lot of takeaways from these games as well, even though we didn't get the medals. There are quite some takeaways. I mean, the female team, the volleyball team, did what they did. They digress. I mean, they did what they achieved what they haven't achieved before, or the African team has achieved. Long jump, we may not have won any medal. We had 3 Nigerians, taking part in the finals. And we can go on, and I think you know better. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's where we are. And I need you to ask the questions that you want to ask. If you want to clarify issues or points, just so that it will inform your reportage of whatever, please do. I thank you.
Okay, who is asking the first question? Your name and your medium.
My name is Michael Obasi from Water FM in Abuja. Honorable Minister, it's a pleasure having you here today. I've been looking for this opportunity, but thank God that's finally come. Listening to you now sounds very convincing about the state of affairs. But for me, my biggest concern with what I've seen at this Olympic Games is the level of communication between the athletes and what they put out there. As a journalist, as Nigerians, of course, we know naturally bad news sells easy. We see the story of Favour Philly, the recent was Asa the cyclist. And for me, finding out what has been the issues and all of that, I just feel that what's the level of the code of conduct of athletes when they're on national assignment? Because very easy for everybody to go to social media now, I'm this, I'm that, and everybody jump into the bandwagon. But I think in as much as one wants to blame these athletes, what is the level of code of conduct put in place for their conduct at national camp of this magnitude?
Okay.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Samuel Abando. I represent Parcel News. My question is, so you've mentioned that the Olympics is a function of infrastructure. And I want to ask, the gains from here, what are the plans for a national sporting infrastructure? What are the plans for a national sporting policy that will guide us going into 2028? Do we have any? If we don't have any, what are we doing afterwards so we can have podium finishes in the next Olympic? Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Okay.
A follow-up to the Philly question.
Okay.
Honorable Minister, sir, my name is Drought of this day newspaper. I want to say that for my interaction with officials and the athletes, this is the first Olympics that the sports ministry avoided past mistakes, past issues that usually create problems in Team Nigeria. In terms of allowances, we all paid and usually pointed out. Ofini had an issue with his federation, and you told us then, sir, when the issue came up, that the matter will not be swept under the table, sir. As Nigeria, as we are returning back home this weekend, what is the exact situation with the Ofini situation between the NOC and the AFX?
Okay.
Okay, let me answer. Level of communication between athletes, and code of conduct put in place. Okay, And you mentioned Essay, the cyclist, and all of that. And I've actually wondered about this, and I'm aware that at the camp in Germany, I believe that the athletes were made to sign a code, of conduct about behavior, all of that. Unfortunately, Ophelia was never at that camp. Unfortunately, she was never at that camp. When I sought to find out, I think she had maybe a competition. She was, so she was never at that camp. But there's a code of conduct. It's a different thing altogether. And essay, the Federation sought the permission of the ministry to allow her to continue her training in Spain instead of joining the foreign camp in Germany. It's in terms of level of communication. I remember when Essay's matter came up yesterday, and people sought for my position as to what Essay had posted. And they wanted it quick. And I said, my response won't be as quick. I'll need to find out what's going on, what happened. And the first person I called, I spoke with the president of her federation. And he told me he himself was in shock, and that he doesn't understand why she did that post. Which is why after I got some bits of more details, I issued a statement on that. And I said that she had been grossly misunderstood, because even her post too didn't capture the proper context within which it happened. But like you also admitted, it does appear that at all times, and especially in sports, it is the bad news, it is the negative one. It's like people are just determined to just wait. They just go look for it. No matter how it is, even if it's not as, they want to tweak it to make it as bad, but that's what it is. Sam, he talked about plans for the national sporting. Okay. The ministry, a few months ago, organized the first ever, I would say, National Council on Sports. It took place in Enugu. And of course, you guys understand, national councils in the different sectors. So this was the first time it was happening for sports. One of the things that was agreed, actually, one of the memos that was presented by the ministry, that memo was by the ministry, was for the creation, the establishment of a national sports infrastructure commission. That was agreed, that memo passed council, and that memo is part of the recommendations or the resolutions of that council. In terms of national policy, of course, you know that the government of the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, deliberated and, passed the national sports industry policy. So the problem is not the policy. There's a policy in place, and the new administration of our president actually stated that it was going to fully implement that policy. I think what remains perhaps is to see the possibilities of turning that policy to a law, a national sports law, which we don't have, which I think that we need to have, because it's going to tie up quite a lot of things and be able to have something that, policy is policy, and law is law. Our hope is that we'll be able to see how we can, have a national sports law that can govern and guide. There are sectors that have benefited from such. The power sector reform bill came in quite handy, for the power sector. The gains may not have started, may not have come yet. The communications, act, so a lot of these, I think that sports especially how much it matters, more than deserves, to have a national sports law. Duro, you talk about the Ofili case and not sweeping under the carpet. I mean, it's I don't say things that I don't do, and I'm as bothered and I'm as concerned about the case. I mean, it's and the level of engagement that I've had in itself should suggest the fact that I'm not one to return to Nigeria after the Olympics and to just keep quiet about it. I think that I'm determined, and the ministry is determined to get to the bottom of this. Who is it that must take responsibility about, the Ofili matter? Somebody must take responsibility. Somebody must be the one that caused it, whether somebody or whether people. Because, okay, you try the best that you can to try to make sure that, because when you come to an Olympics, every news that is generated, first the world is a global, how much more when the entire world is concentrated in one place. So every bad news doesn't do the country well. And I'm glad one of you has admitted and appreciated the fact that for the first time, the ministry made sure it avoided the pitfalls of the past Olympics. And we did, okay, the Ofili post, the first one that came, underscored how in 2020, a number of them couldn't take part because they had not done their out of competition. For this Olympics and for this ministry, not only did we make sure that that wasn't a problem, for the first time, we got the president to send a bill on anti-doping, and the Senate and the House of Reps both passed that bill. So we pursued it to that point. So you do all of this, and then somebody somewhere, does something that gives us the first negative. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it's not something. It's inexcusable, and I think that we're going to get back. If in the past things like this happen, and then people go home and keep quiet. We won't keep quiet this time. People have tried to call me, set up that, and I'm going to look at it the next couple of days before I go back to Nigeria. Even if I have to be the one to sit down there as chairman and interview the people and interrogate and know what's the problem and know what it is. If I don't think I trust anybody enough, I will do so, because Nigerians deserve to know what happened to that situation, that we allowed it to happen and it cost us what it did. I mean, it even gives her the excuse to now say that she didn't make it because of, you can't argue, otherwise, about it, yeah. So thank you.